All right, first of all, I need to give you an access code to the class as it relates to Schoology. So here's your Schoology access code. There are going to be quite a few reading assignments throughout the semester, 10 of them, and these are on Schoology, so you'll access these there, and then you can turn the papers in there. I'll explain that in a bit. All right. BM53B dash 5QRCS. My 5s and my S's sometimes look about the same, so hopefully you got that. BM53B-5QRCS. Okay? I know there's going to be a good bit of questioning as far as Schoology. I don't blame you if you don't know much about technology, and I don't either necessarily. Or if you don't exactly know how to get into Schoology. I understand that you all were somewhat taught on how to get into Schoology. Is that right? In the computer class, in the computer orientation. So you'll go to Schoology.com, log in to your account, and you should be able to join my class with this access code. And then once you get in there, and I'm going to bring a computer. I'm going to have to bring a computer sometime and show you exactly how to do it probably next week. But anyway, once you get in there, you'll open up the assignment, and there's about 8 to 10 questions that you'll have to answer. I'll get to the book in a second. So, all right, just 2 ways I'll accept the answers on those reading assignments. I'll accept them on Schoology, and I'll accept them on paper. I'd rather not go the other route of emailing anymore, because what ends up happening is I'm always having to go through and then print them off anyway. It's a lot easier if I have them on Schoology or actually a printed copy. Okay? All right. I think I'm one short here. Good enough? Need one more there? Okay. All right, just you might, Brother Leach, you might have to get one from Brenda. I'm not for sure. Or do you have one, Brenda? No? All right, send this back to Brother Leach there, if you would. Okay. All right. Description of the class. It's the history of Christianity. Boy, that's broad. Wow, that's broad. The history of Christianity, its beginnings, development, and growth through the Reformation period. Special emphasis will be given to religious leaders of each period. Now, that obviously is very, very broad. And so, as a teacher, I'm taking just certain things out of that massive 2,000 years of history, of church history, and picking out a few things. Now, it says special emphasis will be given to religious leaders. Towards the end of the semester, towards the end, we're gonna really dwell a lot on specific groups and specific people. We're not going to do a chronological history of church history. That'd be impossible. I have about 21 class periods to teach. So obviously that's going to be very, very difficult. We're going to very much fill up. There's no way in the world we're going to be able to teach through all of it. But anyway, it is a real focus on what the church is at the beginning, the development of the church, and the church throughout the first couple hundred years up to basically the Council of Nicaea, 323 AD, Constantine comes on the scene, changes everything. The fall of the split of the Roman Catholic Church, the Roman Empire, Eastern and the Western divisions. Then you go into the Dark Ages. And then after many hundreds of years of very little going on as far as spiritually, you see the awakening starting to happen, the Reformation and so on. And then you come out of that. Basically, that's where we go to, I guess, in the Reformation, some of the great reformers and so on. There's 3 texts in this class. And these are the 3 texts. This one is suggested, Contending for the Faith, Robert Ashcraft. Very good, but there's a good number of things. Well, let me back up. Baptist history and church history, of course, are very much intertwined because, don't get me wrong, Baptists did not come out of the Reformation. Baptists did not come out of the Protestant movement. But at the same time, our history is very much connected with the Protestant history as well, and with even, because of the persecutions, even with the Catholic Church. So this book is not a required textbook, but there's plenty of good reading in here because it definitely still relates to the church history. Next semester, of course, will be the second phase of this. The first semester is church history. Second semester is Baptist history, where they strictly look at the Baptist history. So that's, anyway, trying to keep them apart, but still, anyway, so you understand it's kind of difficult. Here's your textbook primarily for answering questions. Brother Thomas Strauss, he was here a few weeks ago, taught a module on the book of Isaiah. Right? Julia was in there. Who else was in there? Joseph? You weren't in there? Okay, so only Julia and I. So we had a few of us in there. Very interesting, very, very knowledgeable. Okay, he knows the Bible. If you bring any issue up, he's going to have Bible verses to address that. I mean, it's right off the top of his head. He's very knowledgeable out of Connecticut. He's written quite a few books, and this is one of them. I Will Build My Church, The Doctrine and History of the Baptists. And so we'll do a little bit of looking into this even today. But you're going to have reading assignments out of this, and these are the assignments that are on Schoology. I might make an exception for a couple of you. If you're really not internet savvy or whatever, I can give you a list of those questions on paper. Brother Leach, you might like that. So, okay, we want to help you out. I Will Build My Church. Great book. Must have. $21 in the bookstore. And who does not have one of these yet? The bookstore's out. They've ordered them. They're waiting on them. So the first assignment, oh, you don't have a copy of this, do you? I need to get you all a copy of this. It's right here. The first assignment is supposed to be due this Friday, but obviously that's not going to happen. As soon as the books come in, I'll post an update on Schoology, and you make sure you're a member of the group. I'll post an update, and then you can rush into the bookstore and get your book. Or get it online. I guess you could do that as well. I'm assuming they're available online somewhere. Anyway. Okay, so there's this book. This is the text. It's a very good short book. And then this is our main book that we are going to teach through this semester. History of the Churches by David Cloud. Not every chapter, but certain sections of it that we have deemed to be what we want to use for class. And so this will be your textbook that we use in class. And you'll want to make sure you have this with you every class period. Is anybody who does not have one of these yet? Okay? So you want to definitely get into the bookstore and get this soon, by next class period. Okay? So, history of the churches. All right, let's move on. Outside work. Here we go. It's not on here as much or discussed here, but there will be reading assignments. As I mentioned, out of this book, I Will Build My Church, 10 reading assignments, usually about 6 to 10 questions that you'll answer, and whether you read the assigned reading or not. Okay, so there's those reading assignments. There's a research paper. All right, here we go. I have one freshman in here, 2 freshmen in here, okay? Brother Leach, I guess you would classify as a freshman, but I have a hard time calling you that. Each student will write on a topic applicable to the period of church history under discussion this semester. Now, that gives you a very broad array of choices, okay? So what I'd like to do, I'm going to post this paper on Schoology. I made a list of things that I'll post. But here's some ideas of topics that you can write on. Okay? And this will be posted. So let's just talk through this here a little bit. Augustine's theological errors. You can do a study on Augustine. This would be very much a theological type paper. If you're interested in these things, that would be great. Okay, a lot of errors that you can find there. Constantine's founding of the state church concept. Okay, Constantine's founding of the state church concept. Okay, in the Old Testament times, there was very much I'm not saying a church, there was very much I'm getting ahead of myself here. Actually, I have this in the book to talk about as an introductory thing today. But in the Old Testament times, there was very much a monotheistic, not monotheistic, I'm forgetting the word, monolithic or something like that, where they lived under a government that was also the church. Theocracy, yeah, that's true. That's not the word that the book uses, but anyway, I'm trying to remember the book. But that's very true, theocracy. So anyway, in the early Catholic Church, if you want to call it that, Constantine's idea of the state church, they took the Old Testament ideas and forced them onto the New Testament church. And I'm convinced that that's where a big part of even the Protestants today, they have tried to take the Old Testament theology and force it on the New Testament church. And we'll see a few things here in a little bit that involves and the things that leads to. And if anybody disagrees with that, what do you do with them? You stone them. In the Old Testament, they stoned people who left the faith, or if you will. And so, anyway, Constantine, very, very bad person. Okay. Thirdly, some early errors regarding the doctrine of baptism. Early errors regarding the Lord's Supper. If you know anything about other denominations and Protestant denominations, you know that they have taken doctrine of baptism and the doctrine of the Lord's Supper and completely twisted them. I mean, we're literally, they're baptizing babies. Well, where does that come from? It comes, I really believe, from forcing the Old Testament teaching on circumcision, forcing the Old Testament teaching on New Testament church theology. And it doesn't work. They're not connected. If you were in my class earlier in the summer, a few of you, Joseph, Julia, who else? Were you in my class? Pauline Doctrine? Yes, you were. Very much, the church is a totally separate entity. It was a new beginning. Okay, the New Testament era, and the center of the New Testament era is the church age. That's a new beginning. And Paul is the author and the authority on the church, not the theology of the Old Testament Jewish or Old Testament Judaism. Okay? So anyway, that's all been twisted and changed over the years largely by the Catholic Church. Early errors regarding church government. Okay? We have really accepted the idea in our day and age of the independent Baptist movement. Why? We're independent. What happened? The the mainline denominations, the Catholic Church and others, many others, most of the Protestant churches, Anglicanism, okay, that's very much a state church. The king is the head of the church. So anyway, church government, where you have all this hierarchy coming down through the system. Well, where did that start at? And you can figure that out. Some of the weaknesses of Jerome's Vulgate translation, if you have an interest in translations and bad translations of the Bible, there's a good one for you. The Church Fathers' view of the nature of the church. What is the church? Is it invisible? Is it universal? Okay, questions like that. Then, I've got several that are a little bit more, to me, more interesting. I enjoy the theology side of it, but I much more enjoy the historical side of it. So here's some of the groups that you can write about. The Donatists, okay? A group that, these are groups that stood for truth even in the midst of, and sometimes great persecution, going totally against the established state religions. The Donatists, the Novatians, the Paulicians. The Waldenses, you might have heard of those. And many other groups. If you wanted to write on the French Huguenots and the Albigenses and on and on. There's lots of groups of people who stood against the established religion, the established state religions. Any questions on those? I know probably some of you are sitting here saying, who in the world are those groups? We have a lot, and I'll show you some of it. We have an unbelievable supply of resources regarding groups like this. And by the end of this semester, you will know those names. Okay? You'll know them. Promise you. Yes?
Do we have to just pick one of those groups?
One. One will give you plenty. And I hope that by the time you do one of these, you'll enjoy it so much you'll at least, maybe not write a 6-page paper about it, right? But you'll at least study and read about more. I think the vast majority of you will. You'll say, man, I got to read more about this group because these guys took a stand in the face of a lot of persecution. You can write about the Catholic Inquisition, the Bible in the Middle Ages, okay? Long before the King James Version came on the scene, there were other translations that were breaking the darkness of the Middle Ages. Okay? Were they good? Yes, in some ways, in some sense, and most of it was accurate as far as its translation. I don't think hopefully you're not going to sit here and say that Tyndale, that his translation of the Bible, that he was bad because he didn't have the King James Version. Oh, no. He was a light shining through the darkness. Okay? 100 and whatever years, 150, 200 years before the King James Version, if I'm remembering my dates right. Now, here's some obvious ones. Some of the reformers you can write about. Martin Luther. The life and the teachings of Martin Luther. The life and teachings of Ulrich Zwingli out of Switzerland. He's not my ancestor, but my ancestor comes from Switzerland. So me and Manuel, we have bonds that go deeper, than the men's dorm. All right, the life and teachings of William Tyndale, and pretty much any of the reformers, the good reformers, you can write on those. And I'll take you up to the library in a little bit and show you some, I'll show you our shelves and shelves of resources. That'd be great. All right, so let's talk about the research paper a little bit. Those are some of the topics that, it says an assigned list. Maybe I should just keep it limited to these. Did I give you enough options? I think I gave you enough options. So this paper is due on November the 24th. I'm going to have to get this project whatever I'm saying. Assignments and tests and project schedule. I'll get this on Schoology as well. And then we should be very consistent in keeping to this. But my point was that there's going to be a lot of text readings and questions, and then I'll give you a couple of weeks, a week or two at least, before the research paper is due, so you'll have some time to work on the research paper and not spend your time reading the textbook. By the way, you can work on the text readings ahead of time as well. So if you'd like to do those, get all those done this week, jump at it. Turn them in on Schoology, and you don't have to worry about it again. Yes?
You said the paper is due the 24th?
November the 24th. That's what it says, right?
It says 25th.
Oops. Do I have an old one? Okay, let me look. I don't know. It looks, I'm afraid. 25th is a Wednesday. So it is the 24th. Okay, mine says the 24th, and I don't know why yours says different, but it does, huh? The 24th, that's a Tuesday. Thank you for that. So yours all say the 25th? I don't know how that happened, but mine says the 24th. Okay, let's talk about how to set up your paper a little bit, okay? I think this is good to do in any class setting. Oh yeah, I have Nathan. I mentioned freshman. Nathan's also a freshman, right? No, you're not. You're not, right, Nathan? You are a freshman. You've not had any schooling anywhere else. Okay, so let me talk about how to set up your paper, okay? I realize that many of you are upperclassmen, but let me just go through this. I think this will help. This is very detailed in what I expect from you. Tells you exactly how, I know there's more in the APA manual that you're supposed to follow, but this gives you some of the basic criteria that I'm expecting. A minimum of 8 sources must be referenced. These should be listed on the Works Cited page. So 8 sources referenced. Okay? A minimum of 4 of the reference sources must be books. Okay, not just a website. So a minimum of 4. A minimum of 9 in-text citations must be included. When I get a paper that has a whole lot of things in it and I'm reading through it and there's no in-text citations, I usually write at the end something like, you didn't use any resources. If you used resources, there should be in-text citations. So, because you're using those resources. Hopefully the paper is something that you're learning. So if it's just you're spouting this stuff off the top of your head, it's not going to, and then you don't reference, obviously you're not learning anything. So 9 in-text citations included, and then it has to follow the stated format of the APA manual, which is all the little details of the formatting. Okay? Now, there are, in this case, there's going to be 6 pages of actual content. Okay, so before your 6 pages, there's some material, and after your 6 pages, there's material. Okay, this is not 6 pages from, your outline, everything. This is 6 pages of actual content. So we're going to have a page here. First page is going to be your title page. And the APA manual shows you exactly how to do a title page for a research paper. Okay, so there's different things in the APA manual. In our manual that we use, you've got book reports and all kinds of studies and different things. Well, this is a research paper, so go to the section for research paper and you'll see exactly how to do that. So this is your title page. And then you should have, the next page should be a blank page. Why is that? Does the APA manual still state that? It should. I think it does. No? Some of you are looking at me like, no, I don't think so. Yes?
So you can't see your...
So you can't see the next pages. That's the point of it. I thought that it still requires a blank page. If the APA manual says you don't have to, you don't have to. But to me, it always it looks better to have it that way. All right, your third page is going to be your outline. Okay? So you have an outline. If you don't work from an outline, you probably won't have a good paper. Right? So please work using an outline. Now, how do you use an outline? Okay, let's say you're going to write on the life of William Tyndale. I think generally you would divide his life up, his early life. Where did he get his training? Where did he learn to become? When did he grow up? And what kind of situation did he grow up in? That would be your first main point. So you talk about that in his early life, maybe. And then you're going to talk about the teachings or some of the I don't know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. You might talk about his persecutions that he endured, the Bible translations the translation that he made, some of the things that led him to the point where he realized he needed a Bible translation. So you've got several major points in his life. Okay, so make sure you use your outline. So you're going to have, anyway, so any questions on that? I know some of that's English related, but in order for your teacher to have an enjoyable experience reading your paper, please follow that order. So, okay, so your title page, blank page, your outline, and then you've got 6 pages. 6 pages. Full pages. Top to bottom, all 6 pages at least. And then I think Pastor Vogelin, Dr. Vogelin dealt with this. He talked about putting the numbers on every page except the title page. Or is it every page? Every page. And then size 12 font. Size 12 font. Times New Roman. Okay, all of those things, make sure you follow those. 6 pages. Of course, that 6 pages will include an introduction, and then each of your main points discussed. It'll include in-text citations. At least how many of them? 9 of them. It's testing to see if you were listening there. Okay? Any questions on that? And then a conclusion. And then at the end, you're going to have several more pages, a couple more pages. That is your just the bibliography. I'm thinking there's an in-text citation or a citation works cited page, but it'd be a bibliography page. Okay. Somebody turn that off. On video. All right, so any questions on that? So your bibliography. All right. All right, let's move on then. The reading assignment. So you have a research paper. I hope it's fun for you. I hope it's enjoyable for you. I don't mean the writing part. I know the writing is normally, for most of us normal folks, the writing part of it is not fun. Some of you might enjoy writing. Anybody like that? Josh and Jacob, that's good. Jonathan, if you enjoy writing, I'm glad for you because I don't particularly enjoy writing. But I do enjoy the research and I enjoy the reading. When I go up in the library to research or to study something, I always spend longer than I planned on, and I read more things that don't really relate to what I first went up there for. Because I enjoy studying. But the reading assignment that goes along with your paper, with the class, a minimum of 500 pages on the topic of church history must be read. A record of this reading will be submitted at the final exam. The record should include book title, author, and pages read. So you're just going to turn in a paper at the final, and it'll say the book title, it'll say the author of the book, and which pages you read. Okay? If you, there are certain, I'll show you, there are certain encyclopedias up there. If you're reading an encyclopedia, make sure you include just the page numbers that apply to church history. Okay, if there's, anyway, you understand, I think you can figure that out. But the reading of the entire class text, I will build my church, is required. You must read all of this, and all of this reading will count toward the 500-page requirement. So when you get done reading this, without the bibliography at the end, you'll have 170 pages already. Okay? So 500 pages read. Pages read while preparing the research paper. I think that would be a great time for you to do a good bit of reading about your subject. If you're going to write about the Waldenses, boy, make sure there's quite a few books up there on just the Waldensians. Make sure you read those books and then have a piece of paper there as you're reading. Jot down some notes so you don't forget where you found it and what you read, and you can keep it for your paper. Okay? 4 tests throughout the semester. Tests are not accumulative. In addition to class lecture materials, tests will include questions from the chapters of the class text. So the questions that you got on Schoology from this book, many of those questions will show up again on the test. Tests are not accumulative though, so that's good for you. Very good for you. All right, yes, question?
About the dates on the tests, I'm assuming they're incorrect, like the ones with 25th, because they're all Wednesdays. So I'm guessing it's the date.
Yours are, mine are not. I don't know what happened, but I might have switched it later and somehow, anyway. Yours says the 30th?
It would be the 30th, 20th, and the 18th, so I'm assuming that's supposed to be the Tuesday
Okay.
before that.
I will put on the test and project schedule that goes out onto the Schoology. That'll have the right dates on it. So I apologize. I don't know what happened exactly. Okay. Attendance policy. We meet twice a week. Falls under the policy of 3 personal absences allowed, 6 total absences allowed. That includes your sanctioned absences. Are you looking on the back?
There's the back.
Oh, see, that's another problem. So, wow. Anyway, exceeding the total number of personal absences, as well as exceeding the total number of absences, will result in withdrawal, failing from the course. There's a few days where there's a gray day. The day before the Thanksgiving vacation, the day at the end of the Thanksgiving vacation, class period, those are gray days. And what that means is you must be there. So make sure you're in class for sure on those days. They count as a double absence. All right, tests in the class are 55%. The research paper itself is 25%. So make sure you get that in and on time. Any late work is an automatic 0, and late means the beginning of class period. So I need those at the beginning of the class period. And then the reading assignments, the reading questions, those are worth 20% of the final grade. Okay? All right. Well, I've got too many things here. Let me check out my time and see where we're at. I've got a few things that I wanted to mention as far as an introduction today, and I would like for you to take notes on this. Brother Strauss, Dr. Strauss, he, in his introduction, he claims that there are several reasons for our generation's lack of knowledge of Baptist truth. And I know this isn't Baptist history, but I believe that as Bible believers and as Baptists, but especially as Bible believers, we need to have the right view of church history. There's been a very forced view of church history that's come down through the years where people have really, I think, really believed a Catholic Protestant view of church history instead of a biblical view of church history. So he mentions there's three reasons that he mentions for why our generation has very little knowledge of Baptist history and church, the right view of church history. The first reason is because of the controversies in the 1920s. Because of the controversies in the 1920s. There was a great battle for truth starting in the early, it came to a head, I should say, in the 1920s, and it continued on through the 1940s, 1950s. And really the battle was between modernism and fundamentalism. Between modernism and fundamentalism. A lot of the fundamental Baptists and the fundamental Protestants joined together to fight the modernistic theology. Okay, there was a huge battle over modernism. And so what I'm saying is the fundamental Protestants and the fundamental Baptists joined together to fight fight modernistic theology. And we'll talk about, well, not in this class, we won't talk about it, but they did come together. And in the process, when the time came for them to split back up, they lost a lot of their distinctions. Okay? So, anyway, they called these, any doctrine that was still caused, denominational distinctives were labeled non-essentials. Have you heard that term lately? That's a term that you hear a lot now. But even back then, they wanted anything that was considered divisive was called a non-essential. Okay, so I think that had a big reason or a big factor in why we tend to think that the Baptists, we don't want to consider ourselves too extreme or too separated. A second reason for Baptist ignorance is the fear of extremes. Here I want to discuss three major views of church history and especially of Baptist history. Three major views. And the point is that there was a fear of being labeled an extreme. So for a long time, there were two views of church history presented. And the third view is the one that I believe we should hold to that was just not really, it was a view that really wasn't present even. It was either you're this extreme or this extreme. The first one, first view of Baptist history is known as the separatist kinship view. The separatist kinship view. This is the view that teaches that the Roman Catholic Church was the original church and that over time that true church went bad. Okay, so let's think about that for a little bit. Is it true? Is it true that the Roman Catholic Church was the original church? And that they in time, over a long period of time, that they went bad. Okay? If you have an uneducated guess at this, you would probably say that that's acceptable, that that's an acceptable view. Well, remember that the Catholic Church teaches, among many other things, they teach that the first pope was Peter, which is ridiculous. Okay? It's impossible. It's not true. And many, many other things, many other reasons why that is absolutely not true. That the Baptists, that the church got worse and worse, and then the Baptists finally had to pull out of the church because it was getting so bad. That's not true. I'll talk about that more in a second. Baptists were taught that the only alternative to this view was the extreme other end of the spectrum, which is called the successionist kinship view. The successionist. In other words, they all of a sudden, everybody rebelled and said, no, we didn't come from the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church didn't just go bad. The other alternative is that there is a direct line of churches, Baptist churches, all the way back to the apostles. So, here's the Catholic Church. Okay? Here's the Catholic Church. And they have their line coming down, and eventually the theory is that they went bad. Okay, is that them going left? Because left is bad, right? So their line is here, and it went bad. And so the other alternative is supposedly is that Baptists, we have to know that our line continued straight. We didn't go crooked and go off the deep end. Our line continued straight all this time, and we have continued to be true to the gospel. That's the successionist kinship view. To restate that a little bit, this view is known sometimes as landmarkism. If you ever heard of landmark Baptists, they believe that we have a direct line of Baptist churches all the way back to the apostles. Sometimes it's called chain link successionism. And I said I would restate it. Here it is. The only true New Testament Baptist churches are those that have a visible lineage back to the first century. Okay, now if you believe that, if you say you believe that, you've got to prove that. You've got to be able to trace a lineage of Baptist churches. Well, let's start at the beginning instead of starting at the end and going back. Of Baptist churches from Jerusalem to Antioch and down the line to Fairhaven Baptist Church, in my case, because I'm from here now, and wherever your home church is, to trace the roots all the way along. Okay? That can be very difficult, and I personally think it's impossible. Okay? If you disagree with that, that's fine. But I believe it to be impossible. Let me give you a third view. And this eventually Baptists realized, wait a second, we don't come from the Catholic Church, but we also don't have to prove that we didn't come from the Catholic Church. Where's the right view held? Somewhere in the middle. And the view, I believe, is called the spiritual kinship view. I believe this to be the correct view. The spiritual kinship view. We hold kinship back to the earliest apostles, the only apostles, back to the early apostles. We hold kinship to them in a spiritual nature. Not because of a license or because of a charter handed down from generation to generation, Baptist church to Baptist church. There's a spiritual kinship between present-day Baptists and those of the past because of what? Because of what? Salvation. Holy Spirit. Okay, you're naming things, but in general, we have the what? The same... Sorry? Doctrine. We have the same doctrine. Very good. We hold to the same practices. Such as what? Baptism. The Lord's Supper. Foot wash. No, not foot wash. We hold to the same doctrines and practices as the apostles did. And we don't have a chain link attaching us all the way back to there. We don't need one. This view advocates that there have been New Testament churches in every century. Whether they were called Baptist or not, they practiced Baptist doctrine or Bible doctrine. Okay? Sometimes they weren't called Baptists. In fact, a lot of times they weren't called Baptists. Now, isn't there a promise that Jesus made concerning the church and the fact that it would always be in existence and always be effective? Remember Matthew 16, where Jesus said, "The gates of hell shall not prevail against it." The Baptist church, not the Baptist church, but in that case, he didn't say it's the Baptist church, but the Church of Jesus Christ, not the Mormons, the Church of Jesus Christ will always prevail in every century, whether they were called Baptist or not. I believe that they've always been there in existence and accomplishing their purpose. The third reason some Baptists are ignorant to understand biblical teaching about the church is because of their misunderstanding of ecclesia, the meaning of the word church. I'm running out of space here. We'll put it down here. All right, we're going to have a long study on the word ecclesia in a week or two. But the word ecclesia comes from the Greek word that literally means an assembly. The word church, almost every single time it's used in the New Testament, maybe every time in the New Testament, almost every time it's in the Bible, is referring to a local assembly of believers. When it's not used concerning the church, the word ecclesia is used in regard to an assembly somewhere, a local assembly. It's used once in Acts chapter 7, referring back to the Old Testament Jews assembling in the wilderness. The Bible calls it the church in the wilderness. Well, the word church there is the word ecclesia, the gathering in the wilderness around Mount Sinai. It's also used, it's not called a church, but it's the same word for an assembly is used. In the Greek, it's the same word in Acts chapter 19. When the people at Ephesus, they rushed together into the theater and were assembled there. It's the same word. It's an assembly. Anyway, what is the common theory, the Catholic theory about the word church, of course, and they take it, I believe, and this is where I mentioned a little bit ago, a sacralist society, S-A-C-R-A-L, a sacralist society. Told you I would get to this. Jewish theocracy and pagan societies both had sacral societies. They were monolithic rather than pluralistic. In other words, they had their king, their political king, and their religious leader were the same person. So in the Old Testament times, when the king did bad, the people followed and did bad. Religion followed and did bad. Okay? Judaism was very much that way. Let me give you some characteristics of a sacral society. Some characteristics. And by the way, I'm putting this in a negative tone. This is not a good thing, okay? I'll discuss the opposite of this in a second. Some characteristics of a sacral society are the following. Leadership is in one individual. Leadership is in one individual. The king. Even in pagan societies of the Old Testament, the king was also often regarded as a god, a deity. Okay? So it was in one individual. Secondly, another characteristic is that worship came by means of a priesthood. A priesthood. A priesthood was set up and established. Okay, so what does the Catholic Church do? They have a priesthood. Okay? The Pope is the one head. I forgot to mention this. Anglicanism is the English version of Catholicism, really. The king is the head. They have all the priesthood. And to this day, they still follow these things, just like the Catholics do. Third, entrance, another characteristic. Entrance into the sacral society was at birth. You know, the Jews were born into the Jewish system. Catholics, they practice this very much. At birth, they have sacraments bringing a newborn into their religion, into Really, it's a society, a culture. Same with the Anglicans and so on. And then fourth characteristic is this. Anybody who disagrees must be exterminated. If you disagree, a dissident becomes an enemy of the sacred society and have to get rid of them. Children of Israel this way, Roman Catholic Church this way. Even the Protestants were very much this way. Luther, okay? He still believed in infant baptism. They had this idea in their head of a sacred society that the government, the political landscape was also supposed to be ruled by the church. It was the same thing in their minds. And it is Baptists. The point of all this is it's Baptists who have changed this. Baptists came along, always have said there should be separation between church and state. They're not the same. It's not a sacred society. We have a theocracy, in a sense, with the church, but we live in a pluralistic society. Not a sacred society where where the political landscape is ruled also by the religious leader. You understand that? And so that's why America has always been so different in this area of religious freedom. You go to England back in, in the 1700s, there wasn't religious freedom. You go to the countries that were under the rule of the Catholic Church, there wasn't religious freedom. Even when they came to America, the colonies didn't have religious freedom. Okay? Very limited religious freedom. The colonies that had religious freedom, the ones that were led by or that were influenced more by the Baptists. It's very true. So, I know I'm getting into Baptist history here. But it's Baptists who have changed this and changed the mindset to say religious freedom. Of course, the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That was put in there because of influence from the Baptists. And you'll see a lot more of that in this book. That's a very important picture. Look at it later. I don't have time to. Okay? So, sacred societies were bad. They were the idea that, of course, the political leader was also the religious leader. Protestants continued much of that. Protestants, Luther, I didn't mention, Luther persecuted Anabaptists. Okay? So, anyway, it's a Baptist idea that the church and state should be separated. Ecclesia, the word is it represents an autonomous body, a separate local assembly inside a pluralistic state. We live under a political society, a government, but we also practice independent church polity, separation of church and state. Okay, what time do I have? I'm out of time, and I didn't. Oh, okay. All right, I'm going to.